There is a moment when you realize the parent who spent your entire life controlling you forgot one crucial detail. They gave you the power, and they can't take it back. My name is Victoria Hayes. I am 33 years old. I am a trust attorney. I specialize in estate planning and family wealth management. I make $240,000 a year. And 3 years ago, my mother looked me in the eyes and said 5 words that changed everything between us. Don't you ever come back. She said it with such finality, such confidence, like she was closing a door on me forever, like she held all the cards, like I had no choice but to accept her decision. What my mother didn't know, what she had somehow forgotten in her rage, was that 6 months earlier, my grandmother had made me the sole trustee of a $3.2 million trust fund, the same trust fund that was paying for my mother's house, her car, her lifestyle, everything she valued. My mother told me to leave and never come back. So I did exactly what she said. I left and I never came back. But I also stopped approving the trust distributions that were funding her life. What happened next didn't just change our relationship. It revealed who my mother really was when she lost the one thing she valued more than her own daughter: control. Before I tell you what happened when my mother realized what she'd lost, I need something from you. If this story is already making you think about power dynamics in your own family, if you've ever been told to leave by someone who thought they had all the control, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel if you want more real stories about family, money, and what happens when the person who underestimated you realizes they made a catastrophic mistake. And drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country. Tell me if you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to control you and didn't realize you held the power. I read every single comment. We're building a community here of people who refused to be controlled. Now, let me take you back to where this all started, because to understand what I did, you need to understand who my mother is. My mother, Christine Hayes, is a woman who measures her worth by appearances, not by kindness, not by relationships, by how things look from the outside. She grew up in a wealthy family in Greenwich, Connecticut, old money, country clubs, the kind of family where image was everything, and emotions were something you didn't discuss. My grandmother, Eleanor, was different. She was warm where my mother was cold. She was genuine, whereas my mother performed. And she saw everything my mother tried to hide. I was an only child. My father left when I was 4. I don't remember much about him except that he was quiet and my mother talked over him constantly. After he left, it was just me and my mother in the large colonial house my grandmother had bought for us in Westchester, New York. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, more space than 2 people needed. My mother didn't work. She didn't need to. My grandmother's trust fund paid for everything: the house, the car, the private school tuition, the country club membership. Everything. And my mother acted like she'd earned it all herself. She told people at cocktail parties that she'd built a successful life after her divorce. She said she'd provided for her daughter through her own hard work and sacrifice. It was all a lie. My grandmother was funding every dollar. But my mother needed people to think she was independent, successful, self-made. I learned early that my mother's love was conditional. It wasn't based on who I was, it was based on how she made her look. When I was 8 years old, I won an art competition at school. I was so proud. I brought the certificate home and showed my mother. She looked at it and said, "Art? Victoria, art isn't a real skill. You should focus on something practical." When I was 12, I made the honor roll. My mother threw a dinner party to celebrate. Not to celebrate me, to show her friends what an excellent mother she was. I stood there in a dress she'd picked out, smiling on command while she took credit for my achievement. I always knew Victoria was smart. I pushed her so hard. It's exhausting being such a dedicated parent, but it pays off. She hadn't pushed me. She barely knew what classes I was taking. When I was 16, I told my mother I wanted to study law. She frowned. Law? That's so masculine, Victoria. You should study something more appropriate for a woman. Interior design, event planning, something elegant. I went to law school anyway. Georgetown. I paid for it myself with loans and scholarships. My mother could have helped. My grandmother's trust fund had more than enough. But my mother said I needed to learn independence. She meant I needed to learn not to ask her for things. I graduated from law school at 25, passed the bar on my first try, got a job at a prestigious firm in Manhattan specializing in trusts and estates. My mother told people I worked in finance. She thought the law sounded too aggressive. When I was 28, I made partner, youngest partner in my firm's history. I called my mother to tell her. She said, "That's nice, dear. Listen, I need you to come to dinner on Saturday. The Hendersons are coming, and I want to meet them. Wear something pretty, maybe that blue dress I bought you." No congratulations, no pride, just a request to perform for her friends. I stopped calling her with my achievements after that. My grandmother, Eleanor, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer when I was 29. She had 6 months, maybe less. I visited her every day after work, a 2-hour drive from Manhattan to her house in Greenwich. I'd arrive at 7 p.m., leave at 10, drive home, sleep 4 hours, and do it again. My mother visited once a week, for an hour. She'd sit in the chair farthest from the bed and talk about herself. 3 months before my grandmother passed, she called me into her study, just the two of us. She was thin by then, frail, but her mind was sharp. She said, "Victoria, I need to talk to you about my estate." I said, "Grandma, we don't have to do this now."
She held up her hand. "Yes, we do, because I'm running out of time and I need to make sure you understand what I'm about to tell you." She pulled out a folder. Legal documents. Trust the paperwork. She said, "I established a trust 35 years ago. $3.2 million. I've been using the income from that trust to support your mother, her house payment, her car, her lifestyle. All of it comes from the trust." I knew some of this, but not all of it. My grandmother continued, "When I die, that trust doesn't go to your mother. She never gets control of it. The principal stays in the trust, protected, generating income." I nodded. She said, "I'm making you the trustee, Victoria. You'll control when and how the trust makes distributions. You'll decide what gets paid. You'll have complete discretion." I felt my stomach drop. "Grandma, that's a lot of responsibility. And Mom, she's not going to like this." My grandmother looked at me with those sharp blue eyes. "Your mother has never been responsible with money. If I give her control, she'll drain that trust in 5 years and have nothing left. The trust is meant to support her for life, but it needs someone responsible for managing it." She paused. "You're the only one I trust, Victoria. You understand money, you understand the law, and you understand your mother." I said, "She's going to be angry." My grandmother smiled sadly. "Probably, but I'm not making this decision to make her happy. I'm making it to protect her, even from herself." I became the trustee. The documents were signed, notarized, and filed, legal and binding. My grandmother passed away 6 weeks later, peacefully. I was holding her hand. At the funeral, my mother cried dramatically. She told everyone how close they'd been, how much her mother meant to her. I stood quietly in the back and said nothing. The will reading was a week later. My grandmother had left me some personal items, jewelry, books, things that mattered emotionally but weren't worth much financially. The house in Greenwich went to my mother, free and clear, worth about $800,000. And the trust, the $3.2 million trust that funded my mother's entire lifestyle. The attorney read that section. Victoria Hayes is hereby appointed sole trustee of the Eleanor Hayes Family Trust, with full discretion over all distributions. My mother's face went white, then red. She said, "That's wrong. That can't be right. The trust should come to me." The attorney said gently, "Mrs. Hayes, your mother was of sound mind when she established this arrangement. We have medical documentation confirming that, and she put substantial protections in place specifically to prevent challenges." My mother stormed out. She didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. When my mother finally called me, her voice was ice cold. She said, "Victoria, we need to discuss the trust." I said, "Okay." She said, "I need you to approve distributions for the following: $35,000 for a kitchen renovation, $15,000 for a trip to Italy I've been planning, and $12,000 for a new car." $62,000 for wants, not needs. I said, "Mom, the trust is meant to cover your living expenses, housing, utilities, food, and medical. Those are necessities. Kitchen renovations and trips to Italy are not." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in a voice that could cut glass, "You're going to tell me what I can and cannot do with my own mother's money?" I said, "It's not your money. It's the trust's money. And yes, as trustee, that's exactly what I'm going to do. My job is to make sure this money lasts for your lifetime." She said, "You've always been jealous of me. This is your way of getting control, of punishing me." I said, "This isn't about punishment. It's about responsible management." She hung up on me. Over the next 6 months, the requests kept coming, always excessive, always for things she didn't need. I need $20,000 for new furniture. I need $18,000 for a country club membership. I need $10,000 for jewelry. I approved her mortgage payment, her utilities, her car insurance, her reasonable living expenses. I denied everything else. Each denial made her angrier. She started calling me at work, leaving voicemails. "Victoria, you're being unreasonable. You're being controlling. This is my money. My mother wanted me to have this." But my grandmother hadn't wanted her to have it. She'd wanted her to be supported by it. There's a difference. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I was at my apartment in Manhattan, working, late on a case. My mother showed up unannounced. I opened the door. She pushed past me into my apartment. She said, "We're going to talk about this trust situation right now." I said, "Mom, I'm working. Can we schedule the time to—" She cut me off. "No, now. I need money for a down payment on a vacation house in the Hamptons. $65,000. I need you to approve it tomorrow." I stared at her. "You want me to approve $65,000 for a second home?" She said, "It's an investment. Real estate always appreciates. Your grandmother would understand." I said, "Grandma specifically set up the trust so you wouldn't make purchases like this. She wanted you to be comfortable, not extravagant." My mother's face went hard. "You don't know what my mother wanted. You think you do because she made you trustee, but you don't. You're 29 years old. You don't understand how the world works." I said, "I understand how trusts work. I'm a trust attorney, Mom. This is literally my job." She laughed. Harsh. Mean. "Your job. Let me tell you something about your job, Victoria. You work for rich people who need someone to manage their money because they're too busy being important. You're not important. You're an employee. And this little power trip you're on, trying to control me, it needs to stop. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I'm not on a power trip. I'm doing what Grandma asked me to do.
My mother stepped closer. Your grandmother made a mistake. She was old and sick, and you manipulated her. You convinced her to give you control because you've always been jealous of what I have. I said quietly, I haven't asked you for anything. I've paid for my own education, my own apartment, my own life. What exactly am I jealous of? She said, You're jealous that I'm the daughter, not you, that I'm the one who inherited her house, that I'm the one people respect. You're just the granddaughter, the afterthought. I felt tears threatening, but I held them back. I said, I think you should leave. She said, I'll leave when you agree to transfer the trust to me. It's my inheritance. It should be under my control. I said, That's never going to happen. I'm sorry, but Grandma was clear, and legally, you have no claim to control that trust. My mother's face turned red. She said, Then I don't want you in my life. If you're going to control me, manipulate me, use my own mother's money against me, then I don't want anything to do with you. I said, Mom, that's not what I'm... She cut me off. Don't you ever come back. Don't call me. Don't show up at my house. You're out of my life. Completely. She walked to the door, stopped, turned around. She said, You think you have power because you control that trust? You have nothing. I'm your mother. Without me, you have no family, no one. You'll regret this. She left, slammed the door. I stood in my apartment shaking, wondering what had just happened. And then I realized something. She'd told me not to come back. She'd cut me off. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I controlled the money that was funding her entire life. I didn't call my mother after that night. She'd told me not to, so I didn't. I also stopped approving any trust distributions. Let me be clear about what that meant. The trust paid for my mother's mortgage through automatic monthly distributions I approved. It paid her utilities, her car payment, her insurance, everything. When I stopped approving distributions, the payments stopped. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. My mother had some cash reserves, some money in her checking account. Week 3, her mortgage payment bounced. The bank called her. She covered it from her checking account, but that depleted what she had left. Week 4, her utilities got shut-off warnings. Her car payment was late. Week 5, I got a call from my mother's friend Margaret, the one who'd been at all those dinner parties when I was a child. Margaret said, Victoria, your mother's having some financial difficulties. She mentioned you're the trustee of Eleanor's trust. Is there some kind of problem? I said, carefully, Margaret, I can't discuss the details of the trust, but I can tell you that Mom told me she didn't want me in her life anymore. She told me not to contact her, so I haven't. Margaret was quiet. She did what? I said, She came to my apartment. She demanded that I give her money for a vacation house. When I explained I couldn't approve that, she told me never to come back, that I was out of her life. Margaret said, Oh my God. Victoria, I had no idea. She told me you'd abandoned her, that you'd taken control of the trust and cut her off out of spite. I said, That's not what happened. She cut me off. I'm just honoring her request. Margaret said, You need to know she's telling everyone you're the problem, that you're cruel and vindictive. I said, She can tell people whatever she wants. I'm not funding her lifestyle while she tells people I'm the villain. I hung up. Week 6, my mother called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. Victoria, I need to talk to you. Please call me back. It's important. I didn't call back.
Week 7, she called again. This time the tone was different. Victoria, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I said. Can we please talk? I need to discuss the trust distributions. I texted her back. You told me never to come back. I'm respecting your wishes. She called immediately. I didn't answer. She texted, Victoria, please. I made a mistake. I was angry. I didn't mean it. I texted back, you meant it. You meant every word. You told me I had no power, that I was nothing without you. You were wrong. She called 5 more times that day. I didn't answer any of them. Week 9, I got a call from a lawyer I didn't know. He said his name was Robert Morrison. He represented Christine Hayes. He said, Ms. Hayes, I'm calling regarding the Eleanor Hayes Family Trust. My client believes there's been a misunderstanding regarding distributions. I said, there's no misunderstanding. I'm the trustee. I have complete discretion over distributions. I've chosen not to approve any while my mother and I are not in communication. He said, Ms. Hayes, your mother is facing financial hardship. The trust exists for her benefit. Withholding distributions could be seen as a breach of your fiduciary duty. I said, Mr. Morrison, I'm a trust attorney. I know exactly what my fiduciary duties are. The trust exists for my mother's benefit, but it's my job to determine what's truly beneficial. My mother told me she wanted me out of her life. I'm not comfortable approving discretionary distributions until we can establish a healthier relationship. He said, I'll need to review the trust documents. I said, feel free. You'll find that I have complete discretion. My grandmother put that language in there specifically. He hung up. Week 9, my mother showed up at my office. My assistant called me. Victoria, there's a woman here who says she's your mother. She doesn't have an appointment. I said, tell her I'm in a meeting. I wasn't in a meeting, but I wasn't ready to see her. She waited in the lobby for 3 hours. My assistant told me she just sat there, not moving, staring at the wall. Finally, at 5 p.m., I came out. My mother stood up when she saw me. She looked different, smaller. Her makeup wasn't perfect. Her clothes were nice, but not new. She looked like a woman who'd lost something important and didn't know how to get it back. She said, Victoria, please, can we talk? I said, not here, not at my office. She said, then where? When? I said, I'll meet you for coffee tomorrow, Saturday, 10 a.m., the Starbucks on 3rd Avenue.
She nodded. Thank you. I walked past her to the elevator. I arrived at Starbucks at exactly 10 a.m. My mother was already there. She'd been there since 9:30, I later learned. She'd ordered a coffee. It sat in front of her, untouched, going cold. I sat down across from her. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She said, Thank you for meeting me. I nodded. She said, I know I hurt you. What I said that night at your apartment, it was cruel. It was wrong. I said, Yes, it was. She looked down at her coffee. I've been thinking a lot over these past weeks about what your grandmother wanted, about why she made you trustee instead of me. I waited. She said, I thought it was because she didn't trust me, and I was angry about that. I thought it was unfair. She looked up at me. But I understand now. She didn't make you trustee because she didn't trust me. She made you trustee because she knew I'd never be able to tell myself no. She knew I needed someone else to set boundaries. I felt my throat tighten. This was the most self-aware I'd ever heard my mother. She said, I've spent my whole life measuring myself by what I have. My house, my car, my clothes, my friends. I thought that's what made me valuable. And when you became the trustee, when you had the power to say no to me, I felt like I'd lost control of the only thing that made me matter. She started crying. Real tears, not the performative crying I'd seen at my grandmother's funeral. Real grief. She said,
I told you you were nothing without me, but the truth is, I'm nothing without the money, without the appearance, without the performance. And you? You built a whole life. You became someone important. You did it without my help, without my money. You did what I never could." I felt tears in my own eyes now. She said, "Victoria, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for making you feel like you were only valuable when you made me look good, for not being proud of you, for choosing money over you." I said, quietly, "I needed to hear that. I've needed to hear that my whole life." She reached across the table, took my hand. "I'm saying it now, and I'll keep saying it. You are incredible. You are brilliant. You are everything I should have told you you were when you were 8 years old and brought home that art certificate." I smiled through my tears. "You remember that?" She said, "I remember everything. Every moment I dismissed you, every achievement I minimized. I remember all of it, and I'm ashamed." We sat there for a long moment, both of us crying in a Starbucks on 3rd Avenue. Finally, I said, "Mom, I'll start approving distributions again for your living expenses. Mortgage, utilities, car, insurance, the essentials." She nodded. "That's all I need." I said, "But if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be different. I can't just be the trustee. I can't just be the person who manages your money. I need to be your daughter." She said, "I want that too. I want to know you, the real you, not the version I tried to make you into." I said, "That's going to take time. Years, probably. We have a lot to work through." She said, "I'll take whatever time you'll give me." That was 3 years ago. I'm sitting in my office right now. It's early Saturday morning. The city is quiet outside my window. My phone buzzes. A text from my mother. "Good morning. Coffee later? I want to hear about your week." I text back, "Yes. Noon? Perfect. See you then." 3 years ago, my mother and I didn't speak for 2 months. Today, we have coffee every weekend. It's not perfect. We still have hard conversations. She still sometimes slips into old patterns. She mentioned a new car she wanted last month, and I had to remind her that the trust covers replacement vehicles, not upgrade vehicles. She didn't get angry. She said, "You're right. I don't need a new car. The old one works fine." That's growth. She asks me about my work now. Actually asks. Actually listens. Last month, I won a big case, complex trust litigation. I called her to tell her. She said, "Victoria, that's incredible. Tell me about it. How did you approach the legal arguments?" She didn't understand half of what I said, but she listened. She tried. She was proud. That's all I ever wanted. The trust is still there, $3.2 million, generating income, supporting my mother's life. I'm still the trustee. I approve her mortgage every month, her utilities, her car insurance, and her medical expenses. She's comfortable, not extravagant, comfortable. And she's okay with that now. Last year, for the first time, she asked me about my life. Not my work, my life. "Are you happy, Victoria? Really happy?" I thought about it. I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Good. That's all I want for you." 2 weeks ago, we were having coffee, and she said something that surprised me. She said, "Your grandmother was right to make you trustee. I would have destroyed that money. I would have spent it trying to prove I was someone I'm not. You saved me from myself." I said, "Grandma saved you. I'm just following her instructions." She said, "No, you chose to help me, even after I told you I didn't want you in my life. You could have walked away completely, but you didn't. You waited for me to figure it out. Thank you." I reached across the table, held her hand. "We're building something now. It's not the mother-daughter relationship I dreamed of as a child, but it's real, it's honest, and it's ours." If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tell me about power dynamics in your family. Tell me about the moment you realized you had more power than someone thought you did. And, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because I share stories like this every week. Real stories about real people who took their power back. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. And remember, sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to use it and when to wait for someone to change.